All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So we are in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We are on Siman 3, the third chapter, and this is going to be talking about the order of putting one's garments on properly. As we know, we mentioned this previously, that everything, every small, minute detail in Judaism is guided. We have guidance for every single detail, including how we get dressed, including how we shower, including how we, bathe ourselves. There's an order to it, and there's a reason for it. Everything has a reason behind it. We're going to see some of those reasons, but we want to understand first how things should be done. So we begin by saying as follows: It is written, "Ve'hatznei lechasim elokecha," and walk modestly with your God. Therefore, a person must conduct himself modestly in all his ways. So this is referring to the way in which we carry ourselves. We should carry ourselves with modesty. Thus, when putting on and taking off his robe, or any other garment worn directly upon his skin, he should be very careful to not reveal his body, to not expose his body. Ella, you say, well, what does it make a difference? I'm alone in my room. Well, how did he start off? He said to be modest before Hashem, your God. Hashem is everywhere, even in our bedrooms, even in the bathroom, even in the shower, wherever we are. A person should carry themselves with a certain sense of modesty. Now, I want to share with you one of the very, very interesting teachings that my rabbi actually mentioned to all of us, young budding rabbis. This is something that he mentioned to us. He said, we have to have something which is called nechbadus. Nechbadus is, what is kavod? Kavod means honor. Nechbadus is self-honor, self-dignity, self-value, self-worth, self-recognition. What does that mean? That means we all know that there are certain things that are unbecoming of certain people. I'll give you an example. What if you saw I gave this example in the past, okay, but what if you saw a priest with a white collar standing at the street corner, holding a beer in his hand and reading a paper, right? What would be off in that picture? Everything would be off in that picture, right? Yeah. Why? Because the way in which people envision a priest, someone who has a little bit more seriousness, someone who carries themselves with dignity, right? Now, that's an idolater. How about someone who's a rabbi? How should they carry themselves? So when we travel to New York and back, so I typically don't drive in a suit and tie, right? If we're driving, especially in a long distance. So how do I drive? I get comfortable. I can wear comfortable clothes. So whenever we come back to Houston, always the challenge is not a challenge, but the thing that we always talk. It's always funny when we get back to Houston. So we pull off the highway, and now we go to Randall's or Kroger to buy milk for the next morning, because the kids are going to need it for breakfast, and some bread, whatever it is that's needed. So here I am in shorts and a t-shirt, right? And I'm going to go out into Randall's to go buy my groceries that we need for tomorrow morning. So I always have my clothes, my regular clothes, in the back of the car in case there's a need, right? Because I know, as not that I'm something special, but as a purveyor of Torah, someone who teaches Torah, at least for the very minimum, I should respect the people I teach. For them to see their rabbi running around the supermarket in shorts and t-shirt could be disrespectful to them as well. That's my teacher. He doesn't even respect himself. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? So I actually gave this class. We talked a whole class about honor and dignity. And we were talking about every person needs to understand who they are. I'll give you another example, which is a real big change in our culture. The first Apple presentation that was given by Steve Jobs when he came back to Apple, if you remember, when he introduced the iPod, he walked on stage, and usually, till that point, all CEOs had a suit and tie.
Yeah.
He came on with a black t-shirt, a black long sleeve t-shirt, and jeans and sneakers, and walked on stage. And this is the CEO of Apple. And it was a big, big change in the culture of how people carried themselves, because it became the thing now that casual is the new formal, right? And it changed for I don't know if it's for good or not, right? But the idea that there's a way in which people saw an executive till there used to be till the 60s, people, all adult men wore a hat. They went to work, they wore a hat. Remember those days, right? I wasn't around, but neither were you, right? They wore a hat.
I had to wear gloves to go to downtown Houston when I was a little girl.
Wow.
We had to dress up to go on a train ride to Dallas. We had to put on a suit and tie to go on a train ride, and especially if you went on an airplane, you almost had to wear hats.
Wow.
Dressed like he does. You dressed up on the plane. My parents used to do that. Remember, Dave?
Yeah.
He'd come visit us. They're all dressed up.
Right. So, but the idea here is that God doesn't get insulted if we're wearing a shorts and t-shirt. That's not the point.
No.
The point of modesty is not the idea that God is going to be hurt. God's not going to be hurt. Okay. God's not going to be insulted. What is going to be the case? What is going to be the case is that we need to recognize our relationship and our standing with the Almighty, and to have that as a constant wherever we are. So the way in which we act, if there were people in the room, would we just undress ourselves and change into our pajamas? Probably not. So what is it different if there's nobody there? If there's nobody there, we wouldn't do that either. Why? Because the Almighty is there. So the same modesty that we would exercise in front of other people, we should exercise in front of no people.
So how do you do that in the shower?
Right. Oh, so I'll tell you. So my rabbi would say, there's nothing wrong with showering. Well, but I'll tell you what would be an elevated level of modesty. Okay. I'm sure we all experience this. So typically, the water isn't hot immediately. So my rabbi always said, this was one of his examples. He said, someone who's really following this law would turn on the hot water, and when it gets hot, then they would get undressed and go in the shower, not the opposite. Because there you are, you're waiting for the hot water to turn hot, right? That itself is a form of lack of self-respect, that we stand there in such a way. And saying that's what it's not immodest, right? We have to shower, right? There's the things we have to do, but there's a way in which we can do it, showing that as an image of God, as a person who carries, a human being carries the image of God, that we shouldn't be in a compromised situation like that. Okay, that's an example that my rabbi gave. Right? It's just reversing the order. Right? Is everyone good with this? Pascal, you good? Yeah, it makes sense. Eliza, Lauren, Anna, there we go. Okay, so the what? Did they turn on the hot water and then get undressed?
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to stand there in the cold.
Right.
That's exactly right.
I don't want to get into a cold shower. I always let the hot water run, and I test it when it's warm enough. Then I get into the shower.
There you
That's
go.
it. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay, great.
But they should.
So yidaktek meod. So 1 second. Thus, kishalov shel poshet chalukah. When someone is putting on or taking off his robe. Now, the way people used to dress. That's why he says, you'll see soon, to put your upper garments on first. Right? Because it used to be that your upper garments meant your robe. That's your upper garment. It was your robe that covered, right? So today, it would obviously be for a person if a person is undressed completely, to not be exposed, and particularly not to be exposed in their private areas. Yidaktek Modi should be very, very careful. Shalol legalos is good not to expose his body. Ella, rather, yalbisho v'yavshito, he should put on and take off his clothes. Kishu shochev al mishkavo v'chusa, only when he is lying in his bed covered. Ve'al yomar, and he shouldn't say, Hineni b'chadre chadarim v'chashecha, here I am in the innermost room and in the dark, and no one sees me. Miroini, ki hakadosh baruch hu malek kol haaretz kvodam. For remember that the glory of the Holy One, blessed is He, fills the entire world.
Did he just say, get undressed and put your jammies on when you're under the cover?
Oh, so when did I say so?
That's what he said. That's right.
Now, a person can do that with a bathrobe, right? That's the equivalent of, but the idea is...
You can't take off a t-shirt if you're wearing a bathrobe.
Right, so a t-shirt, not, right, that's true. Right. But in yeshiva, that's the way guys would get undressed. If the guy was changing from his regular clothes into pajamas, that's the way he would do it.
Undercover.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. I mean, physically, I could not do that.
Look, there are many people who, if a person is not physically capable of doing that, that's fine also. Again, the idea we're talking about here is getting to a point where we understand that the Almighty's presence is with us constantly and being cognizant of that. That's what we're trying to attain here.
I guess, like you said, I tend to get bogged down in the details.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
The minutiae.
Yeah.
Rabbi Wolbe,
Yes.
what about when they were in Eden and they were first created and they were nude? And
Right.
that was totally fine to be nude in the presence of God until, right, they ate from the tree of knowledge.
Right. Till they knew what it's like. If I don't teach you what green is, you don't know what green is, right? Till a person knows that it's immodest, they wouldn't know that it's immodest, right? Since
So
we're
from that point on, we're
from that point on, it was the revelation that these parts of our bodies need to be covered.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly the point. Is that it's we can get into it when we get back to Genesis to Bereshis. We can get back to that discussion of the whole story behind Adam and Eve and what was going on over there. But let's suffice it to say that they didn't understand that they were even immodest till they ate from the tree of knowledge.
Okay, so
Okay.
there's some exceptions though, right? Because when we're in the middle, although we're modest with everyone else, right? We're still naked before God.
Right. So the idea is like this: is that are we living with a real consciousness of God's presence in our life?
Okay.
Are we living with that for real? Okay. So, and that doesn't make a difference if it's light or dark. People are there, people aren't there. I'm in my innermost room. I'm in my closet, in the back room. It doesn't really make a difference where one is. A person has to carry themselves with an element, a consciousness of modesty. Furthermore, acting with modesty and bashfulness brings a person to full submission before Hashem. May His name be blessed. Okay, Seif 2. We do not follow the traditions of idolaters. And we do not imitate them. So, for example, if someone decides that he's going to do a Magen David around his body before he takes the bat and is about to hit, sometimes they do like a crucifix on themselves, right? You see the baseball players, they do that,
Oh, yeah.
right? So imagine someone says, I'm going to make a Magen David on my chest, right? Just like they do. Don't try to imitate them. Don't try to imitate them. We don't try to do what the nations of the world do. Lo b'malbush, not in the way we dress. We don't dress like them. But lo b'se'ar, not in how we style our hair. v'kayotzeben, and the like. Shenemar lo seichu b'chukas hagom. It says in Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 23, do not follow in the traditions of the nation that I expel from before you. B'nemar, and elsewhere the verse says b'chukosem lo chsilechu. In Deuteronomy, it says, in Leviticus 18:3, it says, do not follow in their traditions. And then further in Deuteronomy 12:30, it says, Hishamar lecha penti nakish achareim, beware for yourself, lest you be attracted to follow after them. Meaning, keep a distance of the ways of the converts. One of the questions I've had over the years is, if you listen to the church, the way they sing is so beautiful. It really is beautiful. I remember when the Pope came to New York and he came to Yankee Stadium, and they had choirs on the whole outfield of Yankee Stadium, and it was on you'd hear it in the news. I was once driving with my father then, and you heard the choirs. It was just so beautiful. Right? It is beautiful, but that's not the way we do it. Right? There's someone say, if it's so beautiful, that's the way we should serve God. No, if that's the way they serve their idols, we do it differently. We don't follow their ways. Okay?
Well, that's interesting because we are.
Why? In what way?
Not that you go to any of the conservative synagogues, they all have choirs.
Right.
And they have choirs in Orthodox synagogues too. Choirs. They don't have instrumental
Well,
music.
they have instrumentals in the conservative synagogues.
I understand what I'm saying.
There's only one Orthodox synagogue that I'm aware of that has a choir, and that's the Great Synagogue in Jerusalem.
I grew up
And
in
it's
the United
only-
Orthodox synagogue in Houston. They had a male choir.
Really? On Shabbos? On a regular Shabbos or
On
holidays?
the high holidays.
On holidays.
Oh, man, that's what the conservatives do.
They have
Look, I don't know. I don't
on
know.
Friday nights, they have,
Either way, we have to be careful not to follow the ways of the nations of the world.
What was the
Yeah.
chapter verse of Deuteronomy?
Deuteronomy 12, verse 30.
Thank you.
By the way, there's a halacha, and we'll get to this much later. There's a halacha that a Jewish boy is not supposed to work in a non-Jewish bakery.
Yeah. Because it leads to
Because
marrying
what's gonna-
non-Jewish girls.
Because what's going to happen is the owner of the bakery is going to say, this guy's a really good catch. Let me introduce him to my daughter,
That's right.
right? Let me introduce him to my daughter, and that can lead to intermarriage. That's also one of the reasons. There are many reasons for what's called yayin nesach, that we need to make sure that our wines are not touched by idolaters. My mother, may she live and be well. Not only that, she didn't want the cleaning lady to touch our wine because she would have my mother would throw out the wine because that's right. She wouldn't want her to see it even. Yeah, my mother, if like the cleaning lady came, get the wine off the table. Right? It was but that's not that. The halacha says that they're not allowed to touch it, and it's only certain types of wines. A wine that is not pasteurized. What they do is they boil the wine to a temperature of, I believe, 68 or 86 degrees Celsius. It's about 210 degrees Fahrenheit or so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's
Either
at least double, I can tell you that.
right. So it's very hot, and the idea is that it diminishes the quality of the wine slightly. And when it is in such a diminished state, it won't be used for idolatry, because they'd only use a higher quality wine for their idolatry. Once we take away this higher level quality, we're not concerned that it would ever be used for an idolatrous purpose. Okay, that's number one. There's another point to it. Is that not only it should be cleared of idolatry, but when we have our wines at this state, what would happen is we won't be sharing wine with non-Jews. You're not going to sit at the wine bar and drink your kosher wine, which is pasteurized, with the non-kosher wine that your friend is drinking. Like to mix the wine here, try my wine, right? The idea is that we should socialize less with non-Jews.
So that's what makes wine kosher, is not solely the fact that it was handled by Jews exclusively.
That's the main.
But also that it was pasteurized.
Well, it does. So here's the thing: it doesn't need to be pasteurized.
Uh-huh.
But if it is pasteurized, it's called mevushal. Mevushal means to cook it, right? If it is pasteurized, then even if a non-Jew touches it, it's fine. If it's not pasteurized, they touch it, you have to throw it out.
Okay.
All right. Actually, this is one of the reasons that Haman, when he came to Achashverosh to try to convince him to kill all the Jews, this is the argument he brought him. He says, do you know that what would happen if a fly falls into a Jewish glass of wine? You take out the fly and you drink the wine. But if you, King Achashverosh, were to touch their wine, they'd spill it out. In the eyes of the Jews, you're worse than a fly. That was his convincing, right? He says, really? Oh, we have to get rid of these people, right? That was the impetus, right? That was the argument, right? But so you have many wines today. In fact, some of the most expensive and most delicious wines are made in Israel, in the Golan Heights, in the Galil, in the northern Israel, where you have the terrain is just incredible. So it really is. You get one of the most beautiful wines you'll ever drink are from Israel. Some of them are pasteurized. You'll see on the bottle they'll say mevushal, but many of them are not, and they're not. Well, the good ones, of course, are not, right? But again, the idea of them being mevushal so that they can be handled, by a non-Jew. That you can serve them at the Torch galas. Remember back then when we used to do Torch galas, we had wines that were all mevushal. We needed to make sure that every bottle of wine was mevushal. It was right because they're being handled by non-Jews. All the waiters are walking around pouring people wine. If there was a non-mevushal wine, it would be forbidden to drink from it.
So it's not just them handling it in the whole process, but
Right.
the bottles themselves, even if they.
Well, it's not if they're touching the glass, but once they start, uncorking them and we don't know what's happening with this. So in any kosher event, they will have a mevushal wine. Okay, but that's just, again, the idea here is not to blend ourselves with the nations of the world. The idea is, yes, we're supposed to be separate. We're supposed to be different. Okay, that's our charge. This prohibition applies only to practices that are marked by a lack of modesty or may have their origins in idolatrous rituals. La yilbash malbush, he should not wear an article of clothes hamiyuchad lehem l'shum geus, that is designated by other nations to convey haughtiness. V'hu malbush sorim, such as the garment worn by dignitaries. Uladugma hada amrina b'gemara, for an example of this, the case mentioned in the Talmud, the asur liyisrael lihizdamos lehem, that it is forbidden for a Jew to imitate the non-Jews, afilu b'ritzuas aminol, even with regard to the type of shoelaces that one wears. If an idolater wears, doesn't mean every non-Jew is not necessarily an idolater, right? But an idolater who wears red shoelaces, right? Or she'im hayadarkam likshorkach, or if they had a manner in which they specifically tied their shoes, b'derech Yisrael be'inyan acher, and the manner in which the Jews were to tie their shoes would be different. O shahayim in hagam lios lehem ritzuas or if they had the custom to wear red laces, v'shel Yisrael shchoris, and the Jewish people wore black ones, for example. Mishum detzeva b'shchora mora alanava v'shiflos v'tznius. Do you know why rabbis mostly wear dark clothes, dark jackets? Anybody knows why?
Because it's slimming.
That's a good reason. Sometimes it doesn't help. Right. Even if it's slimming, it doesn't help much. Right. So I'll tell you why. Do you ever notice when you go to the opera or you go to a concert or you go to any type of event, all of the producing staff, those who take the microphones, put them on the stage, off the stage, they wear a black shirt and a black pants. You know why they do that?
They can't be seen.
So they're not-
They're not, they don't stand out.
So they don't stand out?
They don't stand out. They're humble, so to speak. They just blend into the background. They blend into the, right? Says the halacha. This was written in 1864. Mishum de tzeva shechora mora alanova v'shiflos etznios. Since wearing black is a mark of humility, self-effacement, and modesty. Asur liyisrael l'shanos, then it is forbidden for a Jew to change his custom to that of the other nations. Umizeh yilmod kol adam, and from this example, each person can learn lefi mekomo v'shato, to apply this according to his own time and place. Shehamalbush ha'asur liyuro pritzus, that any garment designed to convey haughtiness or immodesty, lo yasa ha'yisrael kain, should not be fashioned or worn by a Jew. Ella, rather, malbushav yu asuyin b'inyan hamora. Hamore, his garments should be fashioned such that they bespeak al hachno v'shiflus etznius, submission to Hashem, self-effacement and modesty. Hachi amrinon b'sifri, and this, the following, is written in the Sifri. Sifri is one of the Midrash, one of the books of Midrash. It says as follows: Shalot Tamar, you should not say hol ve'hen yotzin ba'argomon, since the others go out dressed in purple. Afani etzi ba'argomon, I too will go out in purple. Hol ve'hen yotzin b'kulusin, argomon is like the royal garments, were like a bluish purple, right? There was a certain type of robes that they would wear. He says now, and since they go out adorned with armor, afani etzi b'kulusin, I will also go out adorned with armor. Shedvarim halolu shedivrei shachatz v'gavohen. He says, for these are arrogant and haughty practices. V'lo che'ele chelek Yaakov, and they have no place within the nation of Jacob, which is obviously the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. Ella, rather, darkom liyos suvanovim, the manner in which the Jewish people act should reflect modesty and humility. V'lo lifnos el ravam, and they should not turn to the arrogant nations in imitation of their ways. V'chein kol davar shenagu leminag b'chok. Likewise, anything that non-Jews practice as a custom and an unexplained tradition, such that there is a reason to be concerned that it contains a trace of idolatry. Yisrael, 1 second. A Jew should refrain from doing this. Therefore, one should not cut his hair, nor should he grow his hair on his head like them. Rather, he should be distinct from them. B'malbushav, in the way he dresses, ubediburo, in the way he speaks, ubeshar masav, and in the rest of his actions, just as he is distinct and different from them in his beliefs and in his character traits. And so he says in Vayikra and Leviticus, "Va'avdil eschem min ha'amim, I have separated you from the nations to be mine." And therefore, there's a special mitzvah, says the Mishnah Berurah, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, there's a special mitzvah to be different. To be different. I was traveling today, so I was traveling my yarmulke, and I was like, people don't look at it as much today as being odd, because there are so many Jews who travel and people go business, they travel all. But then as I was boarding the plane, I see a Muslim family. And all the ladies are wearing their hijabs. And all, the guys are dressed like typical Arab guys, in jeans and whatever. But the women were not ashamed to be dressed modestly. Right? And we should take a page out of that, is that we shouldn't either have any shame. We shouldn't feel, oh, what are people going to think? Or who cares what people think? Who cares what people say? We should feel proud. In fact, it says that 1 in 60th, of the 10 portions of modesty that God gave to the world, then Muslims took 9 of them, which is why they wear those extra garments. They took 9 out of 10 portions of modesty, and they're going to be rewarded for it. They will be rewarded for it. Right? Now, that's not our custom. That's not how we do it. It's not our halacha. That's a little bit over the top, but still, they'll be rewarded for taking that and excelling at it. Yes.
What about army generals and medals of honor, etc.? If you're Jewish, you can't accept the medal.
No, you
of honor.
can. You can. You definitely can.
But it's a sign
Again,
of haughtiness. It's a sign of
It's a sign of
Right.
it's a sign of accomplishment. It's not necessarily a sign of haughtiness. It's a sign of accomplishment.
I see.
Hey, this guy is accomplished, right? There's no reason that they shouldn't be recognized for that accomplishment, right? But if it's a identification of arrogance, that person should stay away from. By the way, that doesn't have to necessarily be the medals or the in Hebrew they call it the falafel, right? The
Epaulet.
right, or epaulet is those
That's the correct term.
right? So in Israel they call it a falafel, right? So if someone has 1 falafel, 2 falafels, 3 falafels, that's how many stars they have on their epaulet. Epaulet. Also, additionally, if a person is dresses a certain way, there's certain ways that the rich boys dress like that. Keep yourself modest, right? I don't have to dress like that to stand out, to call attention to ourselves. That's not our way. Yes.
So if you're saying that dressing in dark colors is a show of modesty,
Right.
and also conversely, if you dress yourself in blues and reds and bright colors, are you trying to portray you're immodest?
Well, it could be seen as that. Again, it's all generational, it's all cultural, and it's something that we have to look. It could be the opposite as well. If you go to I mean, sometimes I've been, challenged with this, but baseball games, right? So I go to a baseball game. So I typically try to fit in.
You were an Astros.
Well, sometimes I've gone with my suit and tie because I was coming from like, what am I supposed to do? And people look at me like, okay, but there are enough people who do wear suit and ties, the business meetings or whatever. So, but it's like, it has to be, if you walk in a tuxedo, that's immodest. Oh, but I'm fully dressed, right? But you're calling attention to yourself. You understand? So it doesn't mean, modesty doesn't mean how much skin is revealed.
Okay,
Modesty means not calling attention to ourselves. Yes.
okay, then women who wear a lot of jewelry, a lot of diamonds and
Right.
stuff,
So, right. That could.
you see that a lot. It's a show of arrogance and lots of other things.
Right,
That
right.
falls into the same category.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I'll just finish with this one story. There was a woman. She gets onto the plane and she sits in first class next to this other woman, and she has the most gorgeous diamond. She says to her, "Wow, that is a pretty gorgeous diamond." So she says, "Oh yeah," and let's say her name is Finkelstein. She says, "Yeah, it's the Finkelstein diamond." She says, "Really? I've never heard of it." She says, "Yeah, it comes with a Mr. Finkelstein." Right? Right? She didn't look like she was too happy, right? If people judge from the outside, like, "Wow, such a fancy diamond." She's like, I'd get rid of the diamond with my husband, right? That was basically the message. It's really sad. It's really sad. People wear things that call a lot of attention. We have to limit that. We have to limit
We
that.
see it a lot. So that just means what we're saying is that that's incorrect.
That's correct. That's correct.
Convert here, I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Throw me the curveball. I'm a very good curveball hitter, so it's fine.
I won't throw you a curveball, all right? So conversely, okay, if everybody dresses in the same way with black hats, black suits and all that, does that not pull attention to those people as well? They're different, they're dressing different than most of them.
No, but I'll tell you like this. If everyone is wearing a black hat and you walk in with a white hat,
You're gonna pull
Right.
attention to
that's
But
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're not Jewish, Jewish community and it pulls attention to everybody that's in that community is dressing alike,
Mhm.
does that not make them have a pull attention to the outside world to see what these people are looking like? And maybe that's a little bit of the jealousy that's involved.
It's possible. It's possible. I'll tell you. I will tell you though that there is a gypsy family that lives right behind my house, and
Gypsies?
yeah,
I can tell.
Oh, David's spotted a mile.
I can
What?
spot a mile already.
That's a whole movie.
They should be called Romans, not.
Romas.
Gypsies.
Okay, I'm sorry. I mean that's how they
It is
introduced.
derogatory.
Okay.
Well,
It is
Oh,
that.
well, well, for the way they conduct themselves.
Well, I'll tell you that's the way they introduced themselves to me.
Didn't they?
Like yeah,
Gypsies.
yeah. They
Because
said yeah, we're
they know that
gypsy.
not
You're
familiar
Jewish.
with
We're
the term
gypsy.
Roma.
That's what they said.
Wow.
Roma.
Because they know that you're not familiar with the term Roma.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that later on in life, culture changed the names of the people, and now they're reverting back to original. Like the
Okay.
Burmese are now Myanmar.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You know,
they're
that
called
was
the
original
Romas.
thing. Yeah,
So they're Romas, otherwise known as gypsies. Okay. So actually, they live right behind me. They're very nice people. Very nice people. Get along very well.
Jewish gypsies?
No,
No,
completely
yeah,
not.
That's what you said.
No, completely not Jewish. But the son, who's now probably 30 years old, he's married, and they have like 4 generations in that house. So it's interesting. So I actually went to their house. I went to visit them once, and so he walks around the neighborhood every day. But on Shabbos, he walks around in a suit and tie.
Really?
He walk and yeah,
Wants to
you,
fit in.
yeah. You and I asked him once, like, why do you wear a suit and tie? He says, because I'm walking in a Jewish community. I want to be respectful to the community. And that's
Very
why
nice.
it's very nice.
It is.
Very nice. He wears a suit and tie when he walks around. Elisa, you've probably seen him, right? You've seen him walking around, right? He walks around in a suit and tie on and actually last week he was wearing a hat. Now it wasn't like a yeshiva hat. It was just a hat that he picked up from one of the. But either way, it was cute. I thought it was cute. Like he was walking around with a hat as well.
It's very nice.
It is very
It
nice.
is.
All right,
Very nice.
the Chumash class will begin in 5 minutes.
Okay.
All right,
Okay. We got a break.
we got a break. We'll see everyone here.
Are you going to email us?
I'll email